Hello everybody and welcome to the Pokemon Ruby Nuzlocke finale. In the last episode, I struggled my way to get to top of Victory Road and finished describing the tale of Hoenn. In this episode, I'll finish the challenge. Before heading to the battlefield, I felt it was important to show the team I will be entering. Most of them are newcomers, as all but one survived the journey. Ah, Phosphora, you knew how to zap those Hoenn water Pokemon to defeat. I pretty much exhausted all the TMs I collected in the jury, and a few you can locate around Hoenn if you revisit areas, like Toxic in the Fiery Path or Brick Break at Sootopolis City. Also, the interview circuit training did wonders on Money and my team, just so I can get 2 Ice Beams. My team consists of 3 Special Sweepers, 2 Tanks, and a Physical Sweeper. This way I can expedite the battles that I'll be going into from this long project. To complete this section, you'll need Pokemon around level 50s, as the Elite Four carry Pokemons of level 46 to 58. As long as you have a diverse team and make up the more powerful moves, then this segment should be pretty easy. And now, with all the drama of the game is doing, all there's left to do is to march on and to prepare for combat. Tough talk from a punk whose name is similar from the land of Down Under. Though having more Pokemon regions based on other countries would make it fun. Probably why Game Freak would never run out of material. Still hoping for a space region. We have here as our first Elite Four battle against Sydney. He has 5 Pokemon and is pretty easy. He specializes in Dark Pokemon, where Special is utilized in this generation, so he can't really use it that well. Instead, he uses other means to get by. He starts off with Mightyena that uses Intimidate to lower attack and Sand Attack to get by to make up for its poor stats. I let off with Aqua Bunny since it has huge power, doubling physical moves, and the best choice to learn Brick Break, which is pretty useful fighting move. Also, it helps being a mixed attacker in general. Sydney's second Pokemon is Saturn. This Pokemon has high special and attack and can utilize its typing well. This one is capable of lowering speed and use special moves. Kind of a slow glass cannon, which takes too long to set up and easy to deal with. I decided to use Midgard as I taught it Flamethrower and would make quick work of this one. No surprise, as Midgard has insane stats in general. Keep in mind, Dragon is special in this generation, so any Dragon you get your hands on needs to be special oriented in this generation. Sydney's third Pokemon is Sharpedo. It is a fast Pokemon that takes advantage of Swagger to slow enemies down and attack. Too bad it's more physical and cannot use its special moves well. A poorly used glass cannon at best. You can see the pattern here as to why Sydney can't hold well. He has to rely on statuses just to get by. Still odd that there's a Dark Elite Four but no Dark Gym Leaders, even though Fairy types already got one in X and Y. I get before as Pokemon were scarce, but now it just seems it should be. Oh well. Sydney's fourth Pokemon and strongest is Absol. This thing is the same as Cacturn, as that it will try to gain buffs and one-shot Pokemon. But like Cacturn, it doesn't have the stats to keep up and will go down with a strong move. Sydney's last Pokemon is Shiftry. This Pokemon is meant to double team and inflict confusion to whittle you down and attack with a psychic move of all things. In terms of difficulty, Sydney's easy, and the best strategy is to be offensive to prevent him from setting up. Not sure why, but it's hard to say where Sydney's character design is based off. His name translates to Shadow, and best guess is designed as a punk character. Even Pokemon Adventure's special doesn't emphasize him much. Oddly enough, they gave him a Zangoose, which he does not even own in-game or in matches. At least the good part about after each fight is I can heal up with potions. Minor changes, but it helps. The next one should be more of a challenge. A ghost channeler Mount Pier. No clue as to why she did not freeze up there with that dress. We have here is a fight against Phoebe. She has 5 Pokemon and her difficulty varies, to be honest. She specializes in ghost Pokemon and will use them effectively. Too bad there's no diversity in her team. You'll see what I mean in a bit. She starts off with Dusclops, which I have said is a powerful wall. In this case, I started with Sigum because I was baiting it to use its move Curse. mainly because its effects are removed when you're switching, and I can freely send in another one to clean up. Also, if you're wondering, no, I do not use Midgard to beat every Elite Four member. It just happens to know Crunch, which is a dark move and can tear tanks up pretty well. Also, due to Curse, the ghost won't be lasting long. Its strategy is to stall and drain using Curse, so best not to drag it out here. You already saw how it can take an Earthquake from a Groudon, so expect some resistance. Just to add to monotony, Phoebe sends out her second and strongest Pokemon, Dusclops. Again. This one is different as it's mostly offensive and knows Shadow Ball, Ice Beam, and Earthquake, so be aware of the type advantage this thing has. Rest assured that it has pretty low offensive stats, so your Pokemon will unlikely go down with one hit. Except with Dragon, since it's 4 times weak and it would just be suicide against Dusclops. So instead I went with Aqua Bunny just because it has no weakness against this Pokemon, and so it just ends up being a stall fest between the two of us. Keep in mind every Elite Four strongest Pokemon has a Citrus Berry to recover, which did not matter here but will become an issue later down the line. Also remember that Ghost Pokemon are physical and can be helpful if you know what you're doing. Phoebe's third Pokemon is Banette. This Pokemon is based off of a cursed doll, which you can find in Mount Pierre. It's kinda hard to find in the Ruby version. This one is a mixed set of defensive and offensive moves. It'll use Shadow Ball mostly, but it can use Will-O-Wisp, which will cause a burn and cut your attack in half. It also knows Spite, which can lower the PP of a move that you're using to limit the attack uses. If you have any Ether Potions, then it should be of some help. It does have pretty decent stats as it did survive the hit. Keep in mind every Elite Four has 2 full restores, so if you want to force them to use it, it can be strategic to make use of it in more manageable Pokemon, like I did right here. This way it won't be problematic later down the line, because you do not want it using it on the strongest Pokemon and dragging this fight even further. Though I do admit this thing really does like dragging the fight on. Phoebe's fourth Pokemon is Sableye. It has no weaknesses as Fairy was not in this time, and so it's a pretty decent tank. Probably why competitive players tend to use it on tournaments. During the Stall Fest, I wanted to point out that Phoebe's design is based on Polynesian spirit channels, as her outfit is similar to the festive Hulu clothing. Not to mention how the Maui, or Eastern Island heads, are there, which makes some sense seeing how the souvenir item referred in Hoenn in Pokemon in X and Y. Hoenn's inspiration seems to be a mixture of culture based on islands, which shows some effort was put into making these characters, and probably another reason why I love this game so much. Phoebe's last Pokemon is yet another Banette. See what I mean about the lack of diversity in their teams? This tends to happen in the earlier versions of games, though the 4th generation wasn't even better. Try looking at Sinnoh's Elite Four Flynn, you'll see what I mean. He has a Flareon for Arceus' sake. She was fun to fight. Weird that she didn't have a Shedinja to add diversity to her ghost Pokemon. Programmers probably thought it'd be too hard with the immunity. Oh well, lost opportunity. Ah, foreigner, and here I thought I found the only blonde person in Hoenn. Well, at least it's not white or blue hair, because that would be too cliche. Right here we have a battle with Glacia. She has 5 Pokemon and is using an underused Ice-type Pokemon, with some being water hybrids. Her first Pokemon is Glalie. This Pokemon's main attraction is that it knows Light Screen is most likely to counter Fire and Electric. Oddly enough, it went offensive, which makes sense seeing how Aqua Bunnies not only do resist it, but it also knows Brick Break to do some damage on these Icicles. Very helpful that she went with the healing already, even though it should be quick. Glalie as a Pokemon has pretty low stats and is one of rarity like Gardevoir, in that this Pokemon cannot be female past Generation 3 as they added an alternate Ghost Ice version of it past this generation. With so little ice types in Hoenn, I suppose Glacia had to make do with this one. Glacia's second Pokemon is Celio. This Pokemon has water and ice with thick fat ability, which means that it does a heck of a job covering its weaknesses, as ice Pokemon are notorious for being the type with the most weaknesses. Now what Celio is doing is using the third weather effect, which is hail. Only ice Pokemon are immune to buffer damage, and that is all it does. In later generation, it makes a powerful move called Blizzard 100% accurate, but that's not the case here. Still good to know for the remakes. Be warned not to drag fighting this Celio, as it knows Ice Ball, which is an ice version of Rollout, and you already know what that leads to. So be aggressive on that one. Glacia's third Pokemon is another Celio. Oh man, I'm having deja vu again. As you can tell, this one is where diversity ends and reuses of Pokemon begins. I really hope the remix fixes this. Now the niche for this Celio is that it knows a track to stop males and blizzards, which depending on your luck can be a good or a bad thing. Also, this hail can stack up damage pretty fast. And of course, Glacia does something clever, and so now I have to do another choice but to switch out and use a water destroyer, Phosphor, just because Aqua Bunny happened to be a male this one instance. And this hail is really annoying as it's dragging out this fight longer than I wanted to. Phosphor should be able to do quick work of it, though it's not doing any better if Blizzard's actually connecting during the switching. I suppose it was bound to connect at some point. Well, at least there goes one more clone with a quick Thunderbolt. Glacia's fourth Pokemon is another Glalie. This one is the same except it trades Light Screen for Shadow Ball, which is redundant since it knows Crunch, and more of a special user while raining the ice. With all this ice, it makes me think about that Glacia said regarding about her origin. She mentioned she's not of Hoenn and is from a cold place. Interesting enough, her name translates to glacier or ice in other languages, except her Japanese name, Prim. Prim can either mean a term for proper or the genus flower Primula, which grow in alpine climates. If I were to make a theory, my guess is that she's from Devon of England, as her model seems to fit it. The Primula genus can be found there, and Devon declared Primula the state flower in 2002, which is the same year this game came out. Either that or another island there where it's cold, but has some European cultural significance. It's just a theory, so don't take it with much value, but it is worth talking about. Now the thing that is annoying here is her use of items. I'm not sure about it, but it is possible that she may use more potions than any other Elite Four, and her bio on her strategy says that she uses items. I never played the game enough to test this, but it seems she is more likely to heal than any other Elite Four. Also, all this heal is slowing down the battle. I am just done with this Glalie and just want to move on. At least heal seems to have expired when I finish off Glalie, because the last moment you do not want it to have it on the field. Glacia's last Pokemon is an evolved clone Walrein, so you can expect very little change. However, hold on, as this behemoth is a Nuzlocke runner's nightmare, as he knows Sheer Cold, which is a one-hit KO move. So you can imagine how problematic it can be, especially how it can similarly play out against my starter. Best strategy is to go electric and pray Sheer Cold does not connect. In terms of difficulty, Glacia is pretty hard if you come unprepared, but with electric and fighting, this should be manageable. Also, the crit kinda helped there at the end. Not sure why she's number 3, considering the next guy would easily lose to her. So far I've had a Punk, a Hulu Spirit Charmer, and a proper type. The next one's gonna be fun. So now a pirate. I would do a bad pirate voice, but it feels too lowbrow and expected. At least he looks more composed than Team Aqua. He could totally take over the group if he wanted to. He just needs to add rum to add to the motif. We have here's a battle against Drake. He has 5 Pokemon and will be the hardest one to defeat unless you're packing ice. He starts off with Bag On, which is meant to do one of 2 things. Either attack mercilessly or use Protect to make you use up Ice Beams, as it is expected and makes a sad attempt to counter it. If you have Ethers, then this should be not an issue. But very handy, as I made it waste a potion already. Despite that, I would not take it lightly, as its main appeal to dragons is they have high stats and will deal high amounts of damage. Just think of Drake's Pokemon as all sweepers, so being completely offensive is not necessarily a good thing against them. Also, Drake's Pokemon have a pretty well move pool, so be aware of your Pokemon's weaknesses. Water works best as none of them know any electric moves. Drake's second Pokemon is Altaria. This Pokemon is fairly weaker than the others, but it has the potential to sweep you. Like Winona, it knows Dragon Dance, which is a move that increases attack and speed. But it can't really utilize it well just because it mainly uses Dragon moves, which is special. So Winona's version of Altaria is technically superior to this one. The only thing to be concerned is Dragon Breath, which is a standard move that has the potential to paralyze, which it seems to be getting it despite healing it. Also, I would recommend not to use any status inflictions, as this dragon knows Refresh, which is able to remove any status conditions. Best method is to use Ice Beams to make quick work of this Pokemon, though the last second paralysis doesn't help me in the slightest. Drake's third Pokemon is Flygon. Now be very careful with this one, as with the other Elite Four he has 2 of them. So even going into battle knowing what he uses wouldn't be much help, as they have 2 different move pools. This one seems to be the type that use delayed attacks to stack up damage from Sandstorm along with normal attacks and make you use up Ice Beams as well. Also, it knows Dragon Breath, which can be a nuisance depending on your luck. However, because it is predictable, you can take advantage of it and try to get a free turn to switch in, which I do in this case with Midgard. As it is immune to ground, it should be able to clean up very well. Also, it seems Intimidate works even though it's in mid-invincibility for him. So it's best to out-predict this Pokemon, as it can be problematic otherwise. Aside from Ice, it also helps to use Dragon moves, as Dragon Pokemon are weak to its own typing. So I recommend getting the Dragon Claw TM for Meteor Falls and the Ice Beam TM before getting to the boss. Otherwise, this will be much harder to deal with. Drake's fourth Pokemon is another Flygon, except this one is more offensive, but also has Sand Attack just to be cheap. Oddly enough, for a ground Pokemon, it doesn't have any ground moves to take advantage. Be careful, as this one does have great coverage and moves. Just be aware that Flygons are more likely fast cannons, so a strong strike could make work of them, like there. From a man in the sea, Drake seems to like kicking sand in your face. He's definitely no Francis Drake. Drake's final Pokemon is Salamence. This Pokemon is the same as mine in every respect, hence why I'm switching, just because I'm uncertain whose is faster and one can one-hit KO each other pretty easily. So instead, Aqua Bunny will clean up here. Be aware it has high stats and will do a ton of damage to any opponent. Having defensive Pokemon will come in handy here. Also use Ice, as I know I'm repeating myself, but I can't emphasize this enough. Also, I have no clue why Drake decided to use Flamethrower. He just gave up at that point. Very poetic Drake, not immature like the anti-hero Lance of Captain. Okay, all there's left to do is one last fight and wrap up this challenge. Funny, it's been a year since I started this. Never thought I would finish it. Hopefully the remakes do this game justice like I tried to. Final battle routine set. Execute. Man, it's been a long time since I've said that. We have here's a battle with Steven, the biggest stalker in Hoenn and the true final boss in the game. In Emerald you get Wallace, but in my opinion this fight and setting is much more suitable. For a rich guy, he does put up a lot of effort and resources knowing what the hero's up to. His first Pokemon is Skarmory. It is a physical tank that will whittle down your health and set up stage challengers, which cause damage upon switching. Special moves are your best friend here, so electric and fire do wonders here. Status effects are also useful, just don't give it time to set up and it should be quick to handle. Steven's second and arguably second strongest Pokemon is Aggron. It is a rock and steel Pokemon that can attack with high attack and defense stats across the board. This Pokemon, however, moves are mostly special except for Earthquake. The moves it knows though are powerful and great coverage. This Pokemon is 4 times weak to fighting and ground, but with high defensive stats, water works best. It has low special and can go down easily like that. Steven's third Pokemon is Cradily. This is the other fossil Pokemon that I did not get to use and instead went with Armaldo. This Pokemon is defensive and will try to recover health and will continue to confuse you. As you can see, having healing for confusion helps, or a berry to expedite this fight. In this instance, Spithle works best as the move set is meant for him. Going offensive won't really help. Instead, using the move Toxic will whittle its HP down, taking advantage of the Stall Fist that it tries to do here. Also, another thing to consider that it's weak to some uncommon types such as Ice, Steel, Fighting, and Bug. Of course, its AI is designed to continue with the confusion. So, if really it's your call if you want to continue healing it off or try to attack with it. Another thing you could try is that if you have a Pokemon that increases stats, this is a perfect opportunity for that. As for the damage it inflicts, is very minimal. Just keep an eye on Ancient Power as it has a chance to increase all its stats and can be a problem if you are really unlucky. As you can tell, it's being very predictable, so hence the reason why I'm just ignoring it and just going for the attack. Also keep an eye on its HP so you don't want Steven using a potion on this one and repeat this process all over again for another 5 minutes. Thankfully, I'm just gonna attack and just end this encounter because it's really annoying. Though just be careful because it uses Giga Drain to regain its health, so I would be cautious about that. Thankfully, with this confusion, it didn't bite me in the head and give it a free chance to heal. Steven's fourth Pokemon is Claydol. This Pokemon is a screen user, much like ES Pig was. It will try to set up Light Screen and Reflect, which lasts for 5 turns and thus adds to its high bulk and attack with Earthquake and Ancient Power. Because it's mainly attack, it cannot do much damage, however defensively it could take hits rather well. In this case I went with Aqua Bunny not only for type advantage but because of Brick Break. The hidden ability to this move is that it can break the walls and do damage. This way Steven's unable to have his walls in preparation for other Pokemon to take advantage. So best to stick with ice or water moves and make sure the walls are down before it goes down. Too bad this Pokemon resists Brick Break as it would have been faster to deal with. Good thing it doesn't know Psychic as this would complicate things. At least it doesn't know Explosion as you remember my earlier experience with how these things will tend to blow up on me. Though more likely than not, if you're fighting it, you'll tend to outlast it as long as you get rid of the screens that it tries to use. Steven's fifth and strongest Pokemon is Metagross. It is a Psychic and Steel Pokemon that has a lot of resistances in this generation and excels in all stats except speed. It has the Clear Body ability, meaning that you can't change its stats to add further frustration. This Pokemon has strong moves to boot as well, as it did high damage to my strongest Pokemon in 1 blue and already used up my berry that I was saving. However, it is weak to fire and ground, though in terms of stats, Fire works best as it has higher defense than special defense. Its signature move is Meteor Mash, which is the second strongest steel move in the game and has a chance to increase attack. As you can tell, no matter what I did, it seems Midgard would not survive to attack. So in this case, I went with the sacrificial play and used Flamethrower to put it in the red and make a use of its berry. Too bad, as I did like Midgard. With all my Pokemon in low health at this time, it seems that all I had to do was rely on my Revenge Killer, which in this case was Inferno, to make its debut and go with Overheat to wrap this thing up. Also, as a side thing, I also have Will-O-Wisp just in case if this thing would go south. Hopefully, I was making sure this was do a one-hit shot. Interesting about Metagross is the remix implies Steven will use a manga version of it. I wonder if the rest of the Elite Four will have them, as all of them have one Pokemon capable of such a task. I suppose wanting harder Pokemon to fight is all part of the challenge. I must admit, this fight has been fun the whole way. Steven's last Pokemon is Armaldo. This is the other fossil Pokemon. Its stats were mainly attack and defense, hence why I used the very helpful move Will-O-Wisp, which causes instant burn and cut the attack in half. Otherwise, this would have knocked out Inferno health. So with little options, I went with Armaldo to wrap things up. Unlike mine, Steven can use a water move, which doesn't really help. Instead, Rock works as it's weak to one of its own typing. In terms of difficulty, Steven is pretty versatile, but as long as you carry a mixed bag yourself and prepare for his Metagross, then it should be not much concern for yourself. All it does is it makes me long for the remix and move on to a more challenging project. But after a long journey, I finally finished the challenge. So now enjoy the ending! Oh, Zephyr, always impeccable with your timing. Took long enough, but yeah, it's officially over. Well, there you have it. Project is done, and now a quick showing of those who helped me finish this project. Partly the MVP for the project was Phosphor for sticking it out to the end. Everyone else was pretty much a newcomer, though I will give a nod to Aqua Bunny for being great for the Elite Four. Either way, it was a great time going through this journey. Now that we're here at the credits and listening to some great music, as well as looking at some of the panels I worked on throughout the project telling the tale of Hoenn in bits and pieces, I wanted to give my final thoughts. I must say, this project was hard, but worthwhile, and a lot of my passion went into it. I do admit, making a Pokemon LP enjoyable was a challenge, especially since this was my first project where I got into the flow of doing videos. Lots of editing, scripting, and of course, creativity. Especially the editing. Trust me on this that the amount of editing is insane for a Pokemon LP. Otherwise, the runtime goes on forever. Still not as bad as Battle Network 1. It also helps to practice and take criticism, as people who critique my work have been a big help. I experimented a bit at the start just trying to get material, but the game just couldn't hold on its own. In the end, using Pokemon Adventure Special as a source material was something I randomly thought up to make it entertaining and it stick. Along with the combination of mechanics and trivia from the game, I managed to keep it from being stale. I know this project took longer than I anticipated, mainly due to the panels I added life to it in order to help the presentation. Also, when I mean I added life to them, I mean I put effort into them making them look better. One major hurdle I had to deal with was the bad scans. A lot of times images I used had smears, over-inking, crooked pages, annoying website text on the bottom, and missing a piece altogether. Fixing it involved leveling blacks and whites, removing parts where it looked bad, some redrawing, and reusing assets to replace damaged scans. Sometimes it took just as long to fix them than to recolor them. I suppose my prior knowledge of being a manga scanlation cleaner helped with the project, and find a method of doing project that has yet to be explored. I do intend to determine how to implement this in other projects. In the core making videos, the project one does is a reflection of oneself. Are you the type to make everyone's videos daily? Maybe you're the type who makes an effort to make something great. Or maybe you're just the type who's creative that can make something entertaining on the spot. In the grand scheme of things, one would have to look back and see if they were proud of what they did. For me, I'm just glad I did this game. It is one of my personal favorites, and looking back, it does have some flaws. The game is not clear a few times as to where to go, and it can be very grindy. Trust me in that doing the interview circuit for hours was not exactly a fun thing to do. Doing a Nuzlocke of this game was very fun, just to see alternate ways of progressing and looking at potential cheap deaths. Hopefully with the remix, Hoenn could be more beautiful than I've already tried to show. I am grateful for anyone who watches this, as it means a lot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this LP. Enjoy the last few panels and the final one of Hoenn. Until then, see you next project.